Xiao Zhan walked away from Weibo Night 2025 with 5 awards. 2 feature films, 3 television dramas, and 1 night where his name was repeated so often that it stopped sounding like coincidence and started sounding like a conclusion. From the moment the results were announced, social media reacted almost instantly. Timelines refreshed faster than usual. Short clips were reposted, comment sections filled up. Not because people were shocked, but because many of them had already felt it coming. By the time that night arrived, a quiet consensus had formed across the year. 2025 had been shaped, in large part, around one name, Xiao Zhan. Star of the Year, Most Loved Film, Most Anticipated Drama. These titles didn't appear in isolation. They arrived one after another, stacking into a pattern that forced people to stop scrolling and pay attention. It raised a question that went beyond awards or rankings. How did one actor manage to occupy so much space across cinema, television, and online conversation within a single year? The answer didn't begin on the night of Weibo Night. It began months earlier with a presence that never truly faded. Throughout 2025, Xiao Zhan wasn't just visible, he was unavoidable. He didn't dominate attention for a week and disappear. He didn't rely on one breakout moment. Instead, he stayed in view, consistently, across different formats and audiences. If you went to the cinema, he was there, carrying a historical martial arts epic on his shoulders. If you turned on the television, he appeared again, anchoring long-form dramas that invited viewers to stay episode after episode. If you opened social media, his name surfaced repeatedly in rankings, trending topics, discussion threads, and short video clips that refused to die out after a single cycle. What made this different from simple overexposure was that Xiao Zhan didn't present the same image every time. The audience wasn't watching the same character dressed in different costumes. They were watching different people with different inner lives, different emotional rhythms, and different demands on the actor portraying them. That distinction mattered. In The Legend of the Condor Heroes, Xiao Zhan stepped into the role of Guo Jing, a figure so iconic that audiences carried decades of expectation into the viewing experience. Guo Jing is not a flashy hero. He is defined by moral clarity, endurance, and a kind of quiet stubbornness that resists shortcuts. Many actors have struggled with this role by trying to modernize it too aggressively or by leaning too heavily into spectacle. Xiao Zhan chose restraint. His Guo Jing didn't seek attention. He didn't dominate scenes through volume or exaggerated gestures. Instead, he existed with a steady gravity. His expressions were measured. His reactions felt grounded. Strength was implied through consistency rather than display. This approach allowed the character to breathe in a contemporary context without losing its traditional core. For modern audiences, especially those accustomed to conflicted and flawed protagonists, this version of Guo Jing felt believable. He wasn't perfect, but he was dependable. He didn't overwhelm the story, he anchored it. And that anchoring quality helped the film resonate beyond nostalgia, drawing in viewers who might not normally gravitate toward classic martial arts narratives. Then came a sharp turn. In A Quiet Life, Xiao Zhan stripped away nearly everything that defined Guo Jing. As Mo Di, he became an ordinary man navigating ordinary circumstances. There were no legendary destinies here, no grand moral battles. The story unfolded through routine, through moments that most people recognize but rarely dramatize. Mo Di worked, spoke, hesitated, and reflected like someone you might pass on the street without noticing. That ordinariness was the point. Xiao Zhan didn't try to elevate the character into something symbolic. He leaned into subtlety. Emotions surfaced quietly, sometimes almost by accident. A pause lingered longer than expected. A smile faded too quickly. A tear appeared without warning and without spectacle. For many viewers, this performance became one of the most discussed precisely because it didn't ask to be discussed. People replayed scenes not to admire technique, but to understand what they had felt. Xiao Zhan didn't perform emotion for effect. He allowed it to exist naturally, trusting the audience to notice. If Guo Jing represented tradition, and Mo De represented everyday realism, then Zang Hai from The Legend of Tibet represented calculation. Zang Hai is a strategist, a man who survives not through strength or warmth, but through intelligence and control. He observes more than he speaks. He weighs options violently. His inner world remains largely inaccessible, even to those closest to him. This role demanded discipline. Xiao Zhan could not rely on expressive dialogue or emotional release. Every movement had to feel intentional. Every silence had to carry meaning. He communicated thought through posture, through eyes that lingered just long enough to suggest hidden conclusions. Zang Hai wasn't designed to be instantly appealing. He was designed to be compelling. Viewers didn't fall for him immediately. They studied him, they debated his choices, they questioned his motives. Long after episodes aired, discussions continued, dissecting what he knew, what he planned, and what he withheld. 3 roles, 3 emotional ecosystems, 1 actor navigating all of them within the same year. What kept audiences watching wasn't novelty alone. It was trust. Trust that Xiao Zhan would not repeat himself. Trust that each appearance carried intention. In an industry where frequent visibility often leads to fatigue, Xiao Zhan achieved something harder: sustained curiosity. By the time Weibo Night 2025 arrived, the ceremony felt less like a launch point and more like a checkpoint. Xiao Zhan had already been central to conversations about box office performance, television ratings, and online influence for months. The awards didn't create momentum, they acknowledged it. As the event unfolded, that acknowledgement became unmistakable. When the first results were announced, his name appeared. Then, it appeared again and again. The title, Star of the Year, captured the scale of his online presence, not just in follower counts, but in engagement, discussion, and sustained attention across the platform. In the film categories, The Legend of the Condor Heroes and A Quiet Life were recognized as among the most loved films of the year. The contrast between these 2 projects was striking. One was rooted in historical spectacle. The other thrived on intimacy and restraint. Their shared success highlighted Xiao Zhan's range and the audience's willingness to follow him across genres. On the television side, The Legend of Tibet was named one of the most loved dramas of the year, while upcoming projects such as Infinite Agent and Miracle in a Small Town received recognition as the most anticipated. Even before airing, these works carried significant public expectation, suggesting confidence that extended beyond completed performances. Weibo Night operates on online participation. Votes and recommendations reflect active engagement rather than passive approval. Across multiple categories, projects associated with Xiao Zhan accumulated high levels of interaction. The numbers didn't just suggest popularity, they demonstrated consistency. What stood out about the night was the absence of shock. Nothing felt random. Everything felt aligned with what audiences had already experienced throughout the year. The ceremony didn't elevate Xiao Zhan to a new status, it confirmed the one he already occupied. And confirmation, especially at that scale, inevitably sparked debate. Soon after the event, discussions emerged questioning the nature of popularity-based awards. Some argued that online voting favors fan-driven momentum over artistic evaluation. When one name dominates multiple categories, skepticism follows naturally. At the same time, an opposing perspective gained traction. Supporters pointed out that Xiao Zhan's projects delivered measurable results beyond social media. Films performed strongly at the box office. Television dramas achieved high viewership. Projects secured prominent broadcast slots and international distribution. His influence wasn't confined to digital enthusiasm. The debate wasn't about declaring a winner or loser. It was about understanding what success looks like in a modern entertainment landscape. Xiao Zhan became a focal point for that discussion, not because he sought it, but because his career intersected multiple measures of value at once. By occupying that intersection, he moved beyond the role of a single award recipient. He became a reference point, a case study, a symbol of how visibility, performance, and market response interact in an era defined by constant exposure. As Weibo Night 2025 came to a close, what lingered wasn't just a list of titles or trophies, it was a sense of continuity. Xiao Zhan hadn't peaked in a moment. He had built something across time. The conversation no longer revolved around whether he could succeed again. It shifted toward a more open question. What would he choose to do next? In an industry that changes quickly, maintaining relevance is difficult. Maintaining anticipation is even harder. And perhaps that is why audiences continue to watch, not because the outcome feels guaranteed, but because the story remains unfinished.